Want to use a PGR in your cereals but have no time for a separate pass? Manipulator PGR can be applied as early as one tiller. Just add it to your herbicide to reduce lodging, increase harvest efficiency, and maximize yields. Talk to your retailer for more info and to confirm acceptable tank mixes.
Let's talk about what's going on in Washington, D.C. Definitely an interesting place this week. We're talking to Jim Wiesemeyer. He is a Pro Farmers D.C. policy analyst. Hey, Jim, how are you doing?
Always good to be on your program. And now that we've got the $95.3 billion foreign aid bill, we can finally get to maybe some ag bills.
Yes. I'm going to get to the farm bill just in a second. Just on that foreign aid package of bills, I think there was four in total. Is this Speaker Johnson proving that he is up to the job? Somebody very inexperienced when it comes to lawmaking, very much on the back, behind the scenes in the past, thrust into the speakership after what happened to Kevin McCarthy. This is him getting some work done.
Yeah, I think it. I think it is. I think you're spot on in that. And in this town, sometimes, especially if you're a new speaker, if you don't have years and years of leadership position, you're kind of down for the nine count before you even start. And that's the way he was by some very good reporters in this town. He has finally found out that we can have a coalition government in the House by working
Yeah.
with the Democrats. And the Democrats, of course, their self-interest there, eyes wide open there. But this has neutered, at least for now, the rebel Republicans in the House. And if he wants bills, they're going to have to continue this approach. And yeah, he may have a motion to vacate on him, but the Democrats are signaling they're going to help him stay in office, by the way.
I wonder what was in that security briefing that people are reporting. It really thrust him to be motivated to get this support to Ukraine. I'm because a lot of people are reporting that really was the trigger point here for him to be very motivated. I wonder what he did, what we don't know that he found out in that security briefing that all of a sudden, hey, we got to get this done.
I think a couple things that Putin would win that battle, and he would not stop at Ukraine. He would go on to the other Eastern European countries, some, and that would bring in NATO.
Hmm.
So you either do it now and limit the U.S. Direct action, or you're in a full-fledged conflict. And I think they convinced him of that.
Now that this heavily discussed topic of whether the U.S. would support Ukraine, what would the amount of money that would be adequate from to supporting Israel perspective. Now that is through the Senate and somewhat behind us, we move on to other things. The highway is wide open now for the farm bill to actually get some attention, Jim. What do we need to be watching out for here?
Well, in middle of May, we're going to have House Ag Chairman G.T. Thompson. He's Republican from Pennsylvania. He's going to issue what we call the chairman's mark, the initial text of the bill. And I'm telling you, it's almost ready. They're going to come out with questions and answers documents. So that tells me they have geared up. They're beginning their briefings, by the way, with some commodity groups. So you could see some leaking of this. But as far as Canada is concerned, some of the initial proposals that I know about is we're going to double the funding for U.S. trade promotion program, market access program, and other trade policies. Now, I will tell you, Shaun, and I know you've seen the same thing. The vast majority of observers of this farm bill give very low to any odds that it's going to be done this calendar year. But I'm going to reserve judgment because now, from what I know about this coming House bill, it's fairly equitable when it comes across our broad expanse of U.S. agriculture. So I think it could gather momentum, but there's a caveat here. The Democrats in the House, relative to the Farm Bill, are in disarray. they have not been, I know this is sensitive to them, they have not been adequately briefed by their ranking chairman, Scott, so from Georgia.
Yeah.
And they don't have a counter proposal at this time, nor have they heard about some of the proposals that they're going to get from the House Republican bill, that some of which they may like. Now, they won't like some other things, food stamps and things like that.
Is the chairman's mark typically one of bipartisan, or does it typically come from one side of the aisle?
Well, usually it's bipartisan, but that's a word not in this town.
Right.
I will tell you that G.T. Thompson, the chairman, has had a hard time. I think for the first time in weeks, I was told he actually talked to the ranking member earlier this week, and that was the first time in weeks. So, how can you buy in something when you're not even talking? So, I think this one will be a Republican bill as opposed to a traditional, out of courtesy, the chairman and the ranking chairman. That's how it's been done in most of the farm bills I've covered, and I've covered 11 out of the 19 that we've had. That's usually how it's done, but nothing's normal anymore.
So the chairman's mark puts kind of a flag in the ground, or like, okay, let's
Here we
move.
go.
Here we go. Okay, so
Yeah, and where the
that's
votes
good.
are, and where are the votes? Because then we have what we call a markup.
Yep.
And I've been told that once they drop this bill, the second or third week of May, I guess, 5 days later, they'll have the markup. So first they'll let it out and let people read it. Okay, I don't know how, whether it'll be the full text or not, but it'll be fairly much detailed as far as summaries and things like that on all the titles. Then they'll have a markup. The key in the markup will be if any Democrats approve that a chairman's mark. If they don't, then you're going to have trouble on the House floor, because much like what we've seen in the foreign aid bill, G.T. Thompson's going to need Democrats to vote for this bill, because there'll be a few Republicans who will not vote for this bill for many different reasons.
Yeah, last Friday, you and I and Chip were talking about the farm bill and how all the different angles of it. And one of the things that you had dropped or discussed was this issue of corn and beans, the Midwest,
Yes,
versus the interests of cotton and sugar in the South.
yes.
Give us some updates on that.
Okay, it's what we call the reference prices. They used to be called target prices.
Yep.
There's going to be variable increases in that depending on the commodity. Now, just think about it. In the U.S., we have about 88 million acres of corn. So every percentage point increase in the reference price really can potentially cost a lot of money. So they're not going to get the same percentage increase as, say, rice or cotton or peanuts, if you will. And but that at least gave the possibility that it's not going to be an equitable bill. But in my discussions with the some of the people involved in this forthcoming legislation, there are other areas where the corn and bean sector and other commodities, wheat, are going to be favored, and usually that's in the details in the ARC program, the two different programs we have for the Title I, and perhaps in the crop insurance area, both in the more incentives to buy up crop insurance, more subsidies, if you will, and also in what we call an area-wide program, SCO, that will help out a number of farmers and limit the need, not obliterate the need for ad hoc disaster. So I'm a little more comfortable now that this won't be a north-south divide that some people feared.
Has, with the slippage in commodity prices, and slippage being a light description of what has happened, has that lessened the volume of the reference price increase push?
No, because how long will this go on? And if you increase that reference price, that means you're going to have payments if these prices are low.
Yeah.
Okay. And here's the kicker on the timing. I don't want to get too wonky on your audience, but we have what we call a budget baseline for the Farm Bill. Well, the current one, you're going to get an update sometime this June, Shaun. The Farm Bill proponents do not want to go into another baseline, because if you do, that'll delay everything, because everything's going to have to be rescored.
Oh, okay.
So that's why the pressure to get this marked up by June is the key. That's your key timeline now. And it made sense when I heard that. Sometime in June, new budget baseline, which will reflect lower prices, which means that the score of the Farm Bill is going to go up beyond the $1.51 trillion over 10 years.
A lot of money. It's a lot of money. Okay, another item that's happening, Mexico and the U.S. in a hard-fought battle when it comes to export of U.S. corn into the country. We're going to have a resolution on this?
Yeah, the Mexican official, if not officials, indicated yesterday, Tuesday, that by September this thing should be resolved. And that kind of squares with what we were told a year ago, that once Mexico held their June elections and Obrador, AMLO, is no longer president, it was a domestic issue for him because he comes from southern Mexico. That's where the majority of tortillas are made, and that's GMO corn for food. Yeah. And so, yeah, but what will Mexico want in return? They're signaling that they have some aspects of their trade, sorry, that they want to bridge into this review of USMCA in 2026. So that they're going to want some items as well.
I don't see, Jim, at all a situation where all three countries say this deal's good. Let's just rubber stamp it and roll it over. I think we're headed to some form of a relook at this. What are you hearing?
Well, you have to look at who's the leaders of all the countries by that time, especially in the U.S., because Trump can bring in a very aggressive.
Well, he's for sure going to want to redo it.
Stand. I think if it's Biden and our current U.S. trade rep Catherine Tai, if you recall, she was a principal writer of the enforcement language in the USMCA. So I think they would more focus on enforcement. Has there been adequate enforcement? And if not, even improve that further. If it's Trump, all bets are off, because he'll see what action has been going on. But, the U.S.-Mexico trade is pretty lofty, and the investment money going in, not only from the U.S. but other countries, as you get nearshoring and as we're moving not totally away, but definitely away from China, Mexico is going to be an increased opportunity for U.S. investors.
And finally, we got to talk about HPAI. I think the situation of avian influenza impacting the dairy herd in parts of the U.S. I've been talking to a lot of stakeholders in Canada and the U.S., and geez, this one has people very concerned, most definitely. And what's interesting, Jim, several different mainstream outlets, the New York Times, and I believe the other one was the Wall Street Journal, very critical of USDA in terms of the transparency on some of the testing and what they're finding.
Yes, and Science Magazine too. That caught people's attention. Read the article in Science Magazine, because that's the premier area there. You had three agencies yesterday release a statement: USDA, the CDC, and FDA, relative to finding this in pasteurized milk. It's still safe. But let's go bottom line, and we've been discussing this, Shaun, on AgriTalk. There's a lot more cases than what they're finding initially. So where is it coming from? That's what they're trying to identify. And I've heard different conjectures: the milking equipment, maybe even from the hog industry. Now, that's conjecture. I want to stress that. Yeah. But it's sensitive.
Yeah, most definitely. Hey,
Very sensitive.
hey, Jim, thank you so much for joining us here today. Hey, I really appreciate it. It's great to see you. All the best
Okay.
to you. You got a busy week in DC, so let's get back to some of that farm bill coverage.
Okay.
Thanks so much, bud. I really
We'll
appreciate
see
it.
ya. Bye-bye.